it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, we're going to learn how to crochet the Super Stitchy Dishcloth. This is a multicolor dishcloth, and we're going to be using some post stitches today, and that's what gives these really interesting little pockets of color that you see here. And we're going to learn how to do this step by step. We're going to begin working the bottom up, and then I'm going to show you at the end how to add this little loop and weave in the ends and everything like that. This is the very last dishcloth of our Summer of Dishcloths crochet along. It's been going on all summer. We've done a new dishcloth every week in the month of July and the month of August. So this is going to be the wrap up of our Summer of Dishcloths crochet along, and we will be gearing up for the fall Flux crochet along very soon too. It's a really beautiful pattern and I can't wait to share it with you. So stay tuned for that later on as fall comes in the coming weeks. So we're going to get started. Now this is a little tiny bit smaller than some of the other ones we've been using, or making rather. This is about 7 inches wide and 7 inches tall. It's a square dishcloth. Some of the other ones we've made are a tiny bit bigger. However, when we get started, I'm going to show you how to make it wider if you want an oversized dishcloth, or make it smaller if you want like a scrubby or something like that. Also, I wanted to mention to be sure and use the hashtag FiberFluxCal to share your work on social media as well. So without further ado, let's jump in and get started with the tutorial. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a ruler or tape measure is super helpful to measure as you go along. We're going to be using the 5.5mm eye crochet hook, and then our yarn we'll be using is the Scrubby Smoothie from Red Heart. Now you may recognize this if you've been crocheting along with us for this cowl. We've used this a lot for all of our dishcloths. Now I'm going to be using 3 colors for this because it sort of has a color block effect with some neat stitch work. So this is called Lime. The center one here is called Coral, and then this one is called Royal. Now feel free to switch it up and do any colors you like. I thought these colors were really fun and bright together for some color play. To begin, we're going to select any of our colors from our palette, and we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Now, I'm going to just zoom in a little bit so you can really see all these stitches I'm working on. And then what we're going to do is chain 30. Now you can do really any even number of stitches that you like. So what we want to do to make a chain is wrap yarn around hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Okay, so here's our starting chain, and you want it to be fairly loose so you can work into those chains. So let's jump into row 1. For row 1, we're going to work a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So this loop here does not count. So count 1, 2, 3, and 4. And to make a double crochet, wrap yarn around hook, insert the hook into that chain, wrap yarn around hook, bring up a loop, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it to the last 2 loops. Okay? Next, we're going to work a double crochet into each chain across. So if you need to back up a little bit and see that double crochet worked one more time, feel free to do that. There's also a slow motion setting in YouTube that you can use as well. Okay, so just continue working your double crochets all the way across to that very last chain of your row. And then we're going to start building upward. Now we're going to stick with our dark blue here for several rows, 6 to be exact. You can change up the number if you like. You could do 3 rows of each color, etc. But we're going to work 6 rows. Okay, we're just going to continue, and we've arrived at this very last chain. So we're going to stick with this dark blue for a couple more rows We're going to do 3 rows of each color actually, and then we're going to switch, okay? So let's move on to row 2 now. So for row 2, we're going to start building some of that beautiful texture. So what we want to do is chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to turn our work. And then what we need to do is look at these posts here. So when you have your stitches that you made in the previous row, each one of them will have this like column shape that's called a post, and then at the top you'll have a nice loop. That's the stitch. So when you work into the post, you're going to be working around this column, and when a pattern says to work into the stitch, you're going into that little loop in the top there, okay? So what we're going to do for our first stitch is work a front post double crochet. That's very similar to the double crochets that we've just worked, but we're just going to be inserting our hook a little differently. So what you want to do is wrap yarn around hook and then we're going to go up under it. So go up under that post, wrap yarn around hook, bring the yarn back through the way you came, just like that, and you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops, okay? Now if you noticed, this first one here, that chain, that turning chain, we didn't do anything with that. We just went into that first stitch, okay? Okay, our next stitch, we're going to do kind of the opposite. We're going to work a back post double crochet. So what you'll want to do for this one is wrap yarn around hook and then locate that next post. Remember we talked about the posts, and then you're going to take your hook and go back behind it, over top of it, and back down. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it back through the way you came. You'll have 3 loops on your hook once again. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. So far it's not looking like much. It actually looks a little jumbly right now, but things are kind of fall into place the more we work our row and subsequent rows. So we're going to just continue this sequence of working front post double crochet, back post double crochet, front and so forth, okay? We're just going to be alternating those 2 stitches all the way across, okay? So next we'll work a front post double crochet, wrap yarn around hook, go up under that post, wrap yarn around hook, bring it back through, 3 loops are on the hook, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops, okay? Now we're going to work the back post double crochet. Wrap yarn around hook, go up under, back down, wrap yarn around hook, bring it back through, 3 loops are on your hook, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. Work your front post double crochet. Now once again, if you need to do the slow motion feature, feel free to do that, or if you need to back up the video, but we're going to pick up the speed a little bit. You can always go backward and see this at a slower pace. Okay, so we worked our front post. Now we're going to work a back post. And it's just where you put that hook when you begin. The rest of the stitch, when you complete the stitch, is worked very, very much like the classic, more standard double crochet, if you will. Okay? So we're just going to continue working front post, back post, front post, back post, all the way across our row here. So just keep going all the way across, and you're going to start to see a little bit of a textural pattern happening here, but it's really going to start to unfold when we add more rows, and it's even going to unfold even more when we start introducing, you can see a little bit, when we start introducing new colors as well. That's really going to make these stitches pop out. So if you were planning on making this a solid color, that is fabulous. It would just sort of be like a crochet study of texture. But if you are also planning on adding color, it's going to be just a total color play with the colors that you've chosen. So I really love seeing in our group and on social media all of the beautiful colors that all of you picked too. Some of your color choices are just so beautiful and creative. I just love seeing what everybody chooses. Okay, so I'm going to continue working my post stitches across. You can see we're sort of getting like a 3D kind of lattice, and it is reversible, but I'm going to keep working across, and then we'll rejoin in just a moment and transition onto row 3 already. Okay, coming up to the end here, we got one more to work. It's a back post double crochet, and then what we're going to do to finish off the row, we're going to work a regular double crochet into the topmost chain of this turning chain. Remember the turning chain we did to transition from row to row? So what you want to do is work a double crochet into the top of the turning chain. Okay, you can kind of wiggle that in there and eyeball it the best you can. Okay, so work that double crochet. Now we're going to work the last row of our sequence, of our pattern sequence, and then after that I'll show you how to switch colors. But you can see kind of the width that I'm getting here. Once again, if you want yours to be wider, like oversized, or if you want to make like a smaller scrubby, just work a multiple of even stitches, or even chains rather. Okay, so for row 3 is very, very similar to row 2, but we're going to be doing things in reverse. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn your work. Okay, and then what we're going to do, now once again, see this first column of our row here, this right here, we're not going to worry about that because this chain 3 counts as one of our double crochets. So we're going to go to that second post we see. Now we're going to work the reverse of what we did before. So in the previous row, this is looking like, so when you kind of dissect these stitches, the front post double crochet will continue in a long column. Now this was actually a back post, but when you flip it over it looks like a front post. We're going to do the opposite. So wherever you see a front post, that long linear column that runs down through the rows, that's a front post, or it's actually the back of the back post. And then where you see this ridge, that's actually a front post on the other side that we worked, but it's looking like a back post on this side. So wherever you see one of those ridges, we're going to work a front post, okay? So not to be completely confusing, but you're going to begin the row with a back post double crochet. So just remember that and you'll be fine. All this other stuff I just said, you can kind of take it as you want it, okay? So once again, work a back post double crochet into that first stitch. This is row 3. We're just doing the opposite how we started the other row. Okay, so work a back post double crochet, then work a front post double crochet. And this is going to build some amazing looking texture for our dishcloth. So we're going to work now a back post, then a front post, then a back post, then a front post. Okay, so we just did a back post, now we're going to work a front post. And if you kind of lose track of what you were doing, it can kind of get, because we're flipping things around and we're interchanging the stitches so much, if you kind of get off track and sort of lose your place here, where you see that long column, you know to work a back post, okay? Where you see that ridge, and I'll show you in just a second when I complete my stitch here, where you see a ridge, like see when we hop over to the next one, see that like, it's almost like a shelf in between that lump. You're going to work a front post, okay? So you're just going to do this all the way across your work here. Okay, and this is really how the entire dishcloth will go. Now you can change colors as often as you like, and you'll get some really interesting kind of interactions with color on the rows, because these post stitches sort of grab and kind of go over the rows, and you'll see what I mean when we switch colors, but they really kind of interact in an interesting way. Okay, so I'm going to continue my sequence all the way across with my back post, and now see I'm at a ridge again, so we're going to work that front post. And here's a little tip. If you're really getting like all mixed up, sometimes when I say it out loud, it might just be because I'm used to doing that when I make videos, but sometimes when I'm working and I'm forgetting what I did on the last stitch or something like that, I sometimes will say it out loud. So I'll say, okay, I'm working a front post, all right, and back post. And for some reason, saying it out loud helps me remember more, so you might want to try that too. Sometimes I get a little mixed up or lost when I'm working stitches, especially when I'm changing my stitches a lot, so you can try that too and see if that works for you. Okay, so here is our fun texture. It looks woven at this point now that we have a couple of rows. I'm going to finish my row 3. Now, you're just going to work rows 2 and 3 for the rest of your project, but we're going to switch colors. So I want to stick around just for a little bit longer and show you how to do that as well. But let's finish this row up first, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, we have just a little ways to go, and I grab my scissors because we're going to snip the yarn here in just a second. All right, so our last stitch is a front post double crochet. And then we are at the end, and you might need to kind of manipulate things around a little bit just to kind of get situated. And then we're going to work a double crochet into that topmost chain of the turning chain that we have here. Now, let me just back up because I wanted to show you something. I inserted this and I only got 1 loop of yarn. When you do this, try to get it into 2 loops of yarn or you're going to kind of stretch it out and it'll look weird. So I just wanted to go back. Whoops, I just wanted to go back and show you that because it can distort it a little bit. Okay, so we worked our double crochet into the topmost chain of that turning chain. Okay, so you can kind of shape things up a little bit. And there is our dishcloth so far. It's looking really pretty, and this blue yarn is just fabulous. I love it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is cut the yarn. Now, if you have a way of joining yarn that you prefer when you switch colors, definitely feel free to do that. You know, do what technique you love best. I grabbed the red yarn because I'm going to do red next. Obviously, you can pick any color you like to continue on with your color sequence. And what I'm going to do is wrap the yarn around my hook and just pull it through to finish that off. Okay? So like I mentioned before, we're just going to be repeating rows 2 and 3, 2 and 3, over and over and over until we get to the top of our dishcloth, which, as a side note, the width and the height are going to be equal, okay? Now you can take, when you're getting the height, when you got a lot more height than I do, you can take the top corner and fold it down, like the top right corner, and fold it down to the bottom left. And if it makes a perfect triangle without any overhang, then you know you have a perfect square. That's just a little trick if you don't have your tape measure hanging out. Okay, so grab your new yarn, and then where we fastened off here, insert your hook back into that stitch. Again, if there's a way that you prefer to do this instead, feel free. I like to just cut the yarn. Bring the new yarn through. And what we're going to do is just tie that right on. Now this is where you're going to start seeing some really fun color interaction. I know I've been talking about that the whole time, but it is a really fun crochet stitch to play around with color. Okay, so we have our new yarn tied on. So reinsert your hook back into that stitch, bring up a loop, and then you're going to once again chain 3. This part will seem super familiar. I just wanted to show you how to do that color change. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and let's do a few stitches together just so you can see. Let's get our tails out of the way. We'll weave those in later. And then remember, this counts as one of our double crochets, so we're not going to work into this post on the right, all the way to the right, I should say. We're going to go to that next one, and that is, because we're doing row 2, that's going to be a front post double crochet. And as a little hint, that ridge is showing here, so that'll give you a little hint as you move across. So work a front post double crochet, work a back post double crochet. You can see that long column kind of gives you the hint about that. There's no need to memorize anything. You can just look at the stitch from the previous row, and that will give you the clue about which stitch to make next. Okay, front post. So we're just going to keep doing that. Front post, back post, front post, back post. This bright red and this dark royal blue remind me of, it's very nautical. Okay, so look, you can see how these colors are joining onto each other. It's really a fun stitch. Okay, so we just did a back post, so we're going to do a front post. And you can see that ridge, that's indicating to us that we're doing that front post on that one. Okay, so just repeat rows 2 and 3 over and over and over again. I'm going to go ahead and work my rows until my height is about the same as my width. And remember that little trick I showed you, you can obviously measure it, but you could also fold down the corners to make a little triangle to, just to see it very quickly as well. So keep working rows 2 and 3, 2 and 3 over and over and over until your height and your width are about the same. And then we're going to finish off our dishcloth, and I'll show you too how to do an optional hanging loop if you'd like to have a hanging loop on your dishcloth as well. If you've joined us for some of our other dishcloths, we've done the hanging loop, and we're going to kind of do it the same way. Okay, so just keep working your dishcloth and we'll rejoin in just a moment. And you can see all these beautiful stitches are interacting with one another. Just working that very last post stitch of our row. Just gonna do the back post double crochet on that one, it happens to be. And then we're gonna work our double crochet, same thing we've been doing, into the topmost chain of that turning chain to finish off the row. Okay, so I have worked, and I'll just show you here in a second when I get my hook out of the way. So we're going to just cut the yarn here, and then I'll show you what I've worked. So just snip that yarn, fasten off, wrap yarn around hook, and just pull it through, and then give that a nice tug. So like I was saying, I worked 3 colors here, and I worked each color twice. Let me just zoom out a little bit so you can see. And you can see how all of that texture and the colors are interacting with one another. So when you do these alternating post stitches like I did, you have these little tiny snippets of color, and they kind of go over into the next color section. So, and if we look at the back looks pretty much the same. So this is a reversible dishcloth, and all this texture gives it some nice, like a nice scrubbing surface. Now I almost forgot, I totally said I was going to show you how to make a hanging loop for this, and I went ahead and fastened off. Now if you haven't fastened off yet, just keep your yarn intact. But if you did like me, no worries. You can just reattach the yarn, or you could do it in a different color if you want to get fancy. But just tie that right back on there. Normally I just hang on to the yarn before fastening off, but I'll show you how to do it if you've already fastened off like I did, because I did say we were doing a hanging loop. Okay, so this is super, super easy. All you're going to do is bring up a loop and then chain 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then you're going to go back down to where you began. So bring your hook back down into that same stitch where you tied that new yarn on, or ended, and then wrap yarn around hook, bring up a loop. We're going to join with a slip stitch, okay? So bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, just like that. And now we're going to fasten off. Just cut the yarn. If you want a bigger hanging loop, then just work more chains. And then we're going to wrap yarn around hook and bring it through. So you can do sort of an afterthought hanging loop like I did here. Okay, so here is our hanging loop. And our dishcloth looks really, really cute. I love the colors, the texture. It's just a really fun to make dishcloth. The last thing we need to do is grab our tapestry needle, because obviously here we have lots of ends, and we're going to weave the ends in. I'm going to show you how to do the first one, and then we'll go ahead and work on these other ends together. If you stuck with a solid color or just 2 colors, you'll have less ends. If you did more colors, obviously you'll have more. But I have a blue tail here, and what I'm going to do is when I weave it in, I'm going to stay in this blue area, just because if you tried to go into the green area, for example, it would really show and stick out and not look as nice and neat. So when you do finish work, you just finished all this beautiful crochet, you want to keep your finish work nice and neat as possible. It really makes a difference, because when you finish your piece, you want it to have that same look as the beautiful crochet that you just did. And it really makes a difference if you kind of slow down and take your time on this part. Some people, it's not their favorite part to do, but it does make a difference if you just take a little extra time to do some neat finish work. So we're going to come back down in the same direction as we did. And this, I like to come back in the opposite direction of where we went up with our tail, because it kind of helps to lock it in a little bit. It gives it just a little extra place for it to hang out. And then what you want to do is just take your scissors, give it a little tug, just a very slight tug, so that when you snip it and then straighten things out, it sort of goes back in there and disappears. Okay? So stay in the same color area, and we're going to repeat for the rest of our tails. So the ends are all woven in and our dishcloth is complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and before we go, this is the last dishcloth of our Summer of Dishcloths crochet along. So I also hope you enjoyed this entire crochet along. We've been working on all of July and August with a new dishcloth every week. So we will be gearing up for the fall crochet along very soon. But in the meantime, please share your images of your own dishcloths using the hashtag FiberFluxCal on social media. And if you are a member of the Ravelry Crochet Along group, I'll put the link down below for that. That's a great place where you can kind of hang out and share your work and ask questions. So that is the Super Stitchy Dishcloth. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest FiberFlux video updates. Thanks again.